Tyler here, back for the Weekend Warriors Show Recap Podcast. This week I'm going to be talking about Thursday night at the Nightshop with Fine Lines and Long Ladder Home, and then we had our double date over in Iowa in Davenport at Kilkenny's Pub. So Thursday, really backtrack here a little bit. Last week I talked a little bit about how I've been pretty sick and had some vocal issues, so I was a little bit worried about this last weekend, and rightfully so. It was a pretty rough weekend, honestly. So Thursday night, played with Fine Lines. We ended up, I thought we were opening, but we ended up playing last somehow. Long Ladder Home opened, and they sounded really good. And then Fine Lines, they hit me up a long time ago trying to set up this show. And we haven't played at the Nightshop yet here in town. We've played at every other place that's been in that location. So it first was Show Me's, then it was Main Street Grill, then it was Catch 22. So we've played at all those. I actually had a weekly show over at Main Street Grill for probably a year or two on Tuesday nights for a long time. So that we're very familiar with that location, but we were excited to get in under the new owners, new management, and everything. And so the Fine Lines, they hit us up a long time ago. They're from Nashville, and they emailed me, and I listened to their music, and I thought it was really, really cool. So I was like, yeah, it's like a double win because I really like their music, and it would be a good excuse to get in over at the Nightshop. So that show was a long time coming, and it was actually, the venue is actually one I recommended because they were talking about trying to set something up at the Bistro, which they hadn't really been doing as much live music. So I gave them some options for some different venues around here, and that's the one they went with. So anyway, I'm kind of a fan of Fine Lines. They sounded really, really good live, and they have some good videos online. So I was pretty excited about the show. Of course, with the vocal issues, didn't really go as good as I was hoping. Kev ended up and played bass on this show. So it was Kev, me, Lo, and Dave. So it was a semi-full band. We were 4-piece, and I don't know. There's just something about doing shows like that I'm just not. It's not really my strong point because a lot of times when we play, we're playing at least a minimum of 2 hours, and we're doing our own sound, and we all know, what we like and how we feel comfortable. Whereas this show is just like, plug in and play as quick as possible. So, no mix, no great mix really. On our end, and we're just trying to get up there and play as many songs as we can, and then my voice crapped out about the second song, so just wasn't ideally what I was shooting for our first performance at the Nightshop, but and it wasn't really packed or anything. It was kind of slow night, but it was a Thursday and it was kind of an early show, so that was to kind of be expected, but in some ways, I'm glad there was a lot of people there because, I didn't sound the best, but I would have liked there to be a lot of people there for Fine Lines because, like I said, they're a really solid band. You could just tell in their set that they were super tight. They were getting ready for some festival up north. They just played like a solid 45, and every song was just like pretty well in the pocket, whereas, when we went up there, we probably played around the same amount of time, but not quite as in the pocket. And since I had the vocal issues, I didn't get as much practice in as I would have liked the week before since I was sick and my voice wasn't really cooperating, trying to really rest it. I don't know. I was just hoping because since I was a fan of Fine Lines, I was hoping they would kind of see us in our best form, but that wasn't the case. Blair was supposed to come too, but he ended up and canceled the week of, which is fine, but and it was probably for the better because it would have just been more stuff to set up, but he probably would have sang a lot more of the songs to kind of cover my vocal stuff. Laura Lynn's song sounded really good, but I think mine were just a little bit off. But after the show, we ended up and we got to hang out with Fine Lines for a little bit, which was cool. They're all super nice guys, and it was good to make some connects that down in Nashville. So if we ever maybe go down there, I have at least one band I could hit up. But anyway, so then Friday and Saturday, like I said, we were over in Davenport, and I was like kind of frantically calling some people to see if they could maybe come and fill some time out for me, which, is kind of a struggle because, we only get X amount for the whole weekend, and, so if we have another band, we got to pay them, and then, you end up and make a lot less, but my voice was so bad on Thursday, I was really pushing for somebody to come and maybe fill some time out. So I had called a buddy of mine from Pontiac, and he initially said he could, but then canceled the next day. So I thought I had it covered, and then it wasn't covered. And then I talked to Long Ladder Home, which they were the other band on Thursday night at the Nightshop, and they couldn't come both nights, but they said they could come Saturday. So I did the Friday night show with just Loa and I, and it went a lot better than I was expecting after that Thursday show. There's just something completely different about, doing your own sound because, I could really push my vocals up front, so I wouldn't have to push those out as hard. And I tuned down, which I had tuned down Thursday, but I don't know how much that helped. That might have hurt me more than it helped me on Thursday, but Friday and Saturday, it definitely made a huge difference because I could, didn't have to push as hard because my vocals were up front, and then I didn't have to push as hard because, I wasn't trying to hit those higher notes, which is a little bit of a kind of confuses you because, you're so used to singing a song a specific way, and then now you're shifting it to a different key, just down a half step, which I guess if you're, a really solid singer wouldn't really make a difference, but when you play a song 1,000 times one way and then you kind of on the fly change it slightly, it messes with your muscle memory quite a bit, but it went well. I mean, I didn't think my voice would last long, and I was really nervous about it, and it lasted the whole night really just fine. There were a few squeaks and little off-key notes here and there, but for the most part, it went well. And so then, I'm thinking, well, I shouldn't even ask somebody to come fill the time, but I'm really glad I did because the second night with Long Ladder Home was a lot of fun. They came and hung out a little bit with us right before, and I don't know, just seeing stuff through, me, I've been playing like probably over 100 shows for, I don't even know how long, 4 or 5 years probably, a year, so I play over 100 shows a year, so I'm a little jaded from, all that, but then, you bring somebody new in that's not used to doing stuff like this all the time, and you kind of see it through their eyes a little bit, and kind of reminds you, like, why you're there, I guess. Even in a not-so-ideal situation where you have to sing for a long time, and your voice isn't cooperating, so you can't, like, have the most fun or perform the best that you would have liked. But anyway, they came, and they were really solid. They played, a good amount of the show. I think they opened up with about a half hour and then did 2 other, like, 10 or 15-minute sets, and all their stuff was great. And then it allowed me to really kind of play up. So because I was covering a lot less time, I could, go a little harder in that amount of time. Plus, my breaks were a little bit longer than they would normally be. So it allowed me to really play up, and I feel like it was my best performance of the weekend and my most favorite performance of the weekend. And, there's something about watching a band before that you like. So Long Ladder Home was playing, and they sounded really good, and that gets you kind of pumped to play a little bit more so than if it's just you the whole night. So that was good. But yeah, so that was pretty much the weekend of shows. I was going to talk a little bit about that movie A Star Is Born, because Lo and I had seen that pretty recently, and being a couple that, travels around and sings together, we might be a little bit overly critical of the movie. I think that my overall thought was that it was just super cheesy. I mean, there was a lot of just really cliche stuff in it. There were a couple good things, though. I really like how they talked about the hearing loss and Bradley Cooper's character, because that's something that musicians, have to deal with at some point. If you're playing a lot of shows and a lot of them are loud, at some point you're going to probably have some issues with your hearing. And then he talked about the in-ear monitors, because that's what they wanted him to wear to kind of mitigate that hearing loss and to at least keep it maintained instead of lose more hearing. But he doesn't want to wear them. And there's a tiny scene in there, but it's something that I think most people don't really think about. And if you pay attention to any professional musician, like on a large scale, like playing, big stages, like 80 to 90% of them will have in-ear monitors, especially if they're singing. And it's just, as somebody who's used them and somebody who hasn't, the thing he says in the movie was pretty accurate. It was talking about how he needs to be like there with the crowd in that moment, and it really does take you out of it. Like it's kind of strangely isolating when you're in your monitors, because all you hear is the music. You don't hear the crowd at all. You can't really interact with the crowd. If everybody has them, you can kind of talk to each other a little bit. So I've noticed that with like big bands that all have them in, they can kind of talk quietly and they can hear themselves talk, so they can have little conversations and stuff. But the times I've worn them, I was the only one wearing them in the group, and it makes you so in your head that it's really hard to perform. So I thought that was interesting. And then a big part of the movie was Bradley Cooper's character being an alcoholic. And I think that that's something that was pretty on point. It is something that I think a lot of musicians struggle with, and he was popping pills too, and I think that that's a pretty common thing when it comes to anybody that performs or has to perform something live. And so I thought that they did a good job of covering that, and I thought they shot the concerts like really solidly. They really captured kind of what it's like to be on that side of the performance. You could kind of feel the energy a little bit more so than stuff I've seen in the past of movies trying to capture that. But overall, the dialogue and stuff was a little bit too cheesy for me, but I think they definitely touched on some stuff that every musician kind of has to deal with. It was just like the love story part of it was a little bit too much for me, but everything else I thought they did a good job. One scene that particularly bugged me was, at the beginning he hears her sing an original song one time, and he's like really drunk, and she pretty much only sings like half of it, or like a verse and a chorus, and it's completely a cappella, and somehow the next day he has like a full band arrangement of it. I do like the song. We've been covering that pretty regularly, but that was a little bit too much for me. And he wrote like a little verse and stuff. I don't know. Just that didn't really make sense. But that's just me being overly picky. Like I said, there was some good points in there, but there was a lot of fluff, I feel like. But anyway, I don't know why. Since it's a movie about musicians and performers and stuff, I thought, since we saw it, and we avoided it because I kind of thought it would be really cheesy when we first saw the commercials for it, the trailers for it. But we heard all the hype, and it won some awards, and I actually learned that Shallow song, like I mentioned earlier, and I ended up and was like, well, maybe it's better than I thought it would be, and it kind of just turned out to be. I just think Walk the Line is a better overall movie, and kind of, maybe because it's based on a true story. It's probably a little over dramatized as well, but it just seemed more realistic. And I mean, those are good actors too. I think Bradley Cooper's a good actor. Lady Gaga's new to it, but I think she did a good job. It was just like maybe the writing in it wasn't that realistic or something. I don't know. Anyway, so that was the shows this last weekend, and that was my review of A Star Is Born. And I will say that Lady Gaga is pretty impressive singer all around. I mean, it's kind of funny. You listen to that song, and Bradley Cooper has an okay voice. I don't think it's terrible or anything, but you can really hear the time Gaga's put into performing, because it is just next level singing. But anyway, so that's kind of the weekend and the review of that movie. Thanks for listening. Have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. Next week we have Trading Post Friday, and then Saturday we have, it's St. Patty's Day, or the day before St. Patty's Day, over at Smith's Tap in Flanagan. So that'll be what I'm talking about next week. So have a good one, and I'll talk to you next time.